There are some days when nothing seems to go right. Len Imbrogno, the driver of the Centurion funny car, slams into the guardrail at a qualifying run at the Gatornationals. The car, minus the right front wheel, slides to a stop. The fiberglass still burning on the front of the vehicle. Imbrogno encased inside that smoking funny car. The NHRA safety safari crew and firefighting equipment arriving right on the scene. Crew member checking on the condition of Imbrogno. Both cars left the starting line together. Kosti Ivanov into a gigantic wheel stand. Then Imbrogno into the guardrail. The force of the impact ripping the right front wheel and axle assembly off the car. The fuel tank splitting, catching on fire. Imbrogno totally out of control. He can't steer that car, that $40,000 funny car that's now basically a piece of junk. Imbrogno coming to a sliding stop at the start of the speed trap, just 66 feet short of the finish line at Gainesville Raceway. The remains of the chassis suspended from the wrecker as it's taken from the racetrack. You see dramatic proof of the force of the impact as the right front wheel and axle assembly ripped from the car, but the roll cage in excellent condition. A lot of luck for Len Imbrogno so he can talk to Steve Evans.
Well, Dave, as what's left of the Centurion funny car is being pulled off the track, this is Len Imbrogno. How are you?
Oh, I'm all right.
That's about as hard as I've seen a funny car hit the rail in a long time.
Really? The car went into a tire shake, which is normal for funny cars, and generally when you shift the car into high gear, the tire shake will stop. But apparently this one had its front wheels off the ground, and as I shifted it, that's all I can remember. But it was veering, I guess. It got out of its tracks, and as soon as it got out of its track a little bit, it went right into the guardrail just as I shifted it. So,
and once you hit the rail, you had no steering. How close did you come to Kosti Ivanov?
I didn't even see Kosti. I tried to keep it, everything to this side as much as possible. I don't remember seeing Kosti at all.
Okay, well, our condolences on the loss of a fine race car, but you're okay, and that's what really counts.
Thank you, Steve.
What does 31-year-old Len Imbrogno and his partner Ken Thornburg do? Well, of course, they build another funny car. Hello, everybody. I'm Dave McClelland. Along with Steve Evans, we're bringing you the 1980 Gatornationals from Gainesville, Florida. Qualifying is completed. The fields are set for today's final eliminations. We'll be back with more Gatornationals excitement in just a moment. We're just about ready for the next round of Top Fuel Eliminator at the Gatornationals. And NHRA officials, President Wally Parks and Competition Director Steve Gibbs, look on from monitor control section of the timing facility here at Gainesville Raceway. Top Fuel Eliminator, some of the most exotic race cars in all of the world. Let's find out more about them.
22 feet of tubing, a 2,000 horsepower, supercharged nitro-burning engine behind the driver, all wrapped in a hand-formed aluminum skin with a parachute brake to stop it. That's the modern-day Top Fuel dragster that has evolved over the last 2 decades from what we once called the hot rod. The controls, very simple. A clutch pedal, a throttle, a hand brake, a shifter, parachute release, and fuel shut-off. That's all he needs at 5 seconds, 250 miles an hour, the fastest accelerating vehicle in the world.
Steve, the fastest accelerating vehicle in qualifying was this car, the Top Fuel dragster, owned by Larry Miner and driven by 2-time national champion Gary Beck. The start of a new team in the 1980 season as Beck taking over the driving chores for this vehicle in the first round of competition came up against Dick LaHaye. The California-based team of Miner and Beck against LaHaye, who hails from Lansing, Michigan. The track had been repaved during the winter with a concrete starting line pad installed. Was a very tricky racing surface throughout all of qualifying. Both cars into the staging beams, and it is Beck with a good lead and extending that lead throughout the first round win. It is Gary Beck with a 5.71 second elapsed time. That is the quickest elapsed time recorded since 1975 in all of drag racing. Watch how he pulls away from Dick LaHaye right at the very start. LaHaye running a very respectable 6.04 second elapsed time is still a train length behind Gary Beck's record-shattering 5.71 second elapsed time.
Dave, Gary Beck certainly served notice. He's the man to beat, qualifying low at a 5.81, but as he gets his helmet off, I want to be the first to tell him that he just ran the quickest time in probably 3 or 4 years, a 5.71, GB.
And that's great, Steve, isn't it? It's unbelievable. The car's an EPN car, I'll tell you. We've been working on it, Jim Wright and Larry Miner, and it's just steady and runs sweet as a pie.
And clean and dry, apparently no oil, no parts hurt.
And that's something. Look. You all right? All right.
Gary Beck's not only excited, he's talking to his motor, David.
Steve, let's hope that the motor doesn't talk back to Gary. Here's the crew, Jim Wright, the crew chief, and of course the car owner, Larry Miner, overjoyed with that 5.71 second elapsed time, the 5th quickest time in the history of the drag racing sport. As Gary goes into round number 2, here's who he'll race. Bob Noyes drives for Jim Brissett. Another of the top fuel racers, a favorite of all the Floridians, Big Daddy Don Garland. From Compton, California, on his first full year on the national event circuit, John Kimball. The number 2 qualifier, Jeb Allen, he came in with a 5.87 second elapsed time. Frank Bradley from Napa, California, former Winter Nationals champ. Richard Tharp out of Dallas, Texas, regarded as one of the top drivers in the sport. And Shirley Muldowney, former world champion, qualified very well at this Gatornationals. The crowd standing on their feet as we get ready to go into round number 2 of top fuel eliminations. Record-shattering crowd, all eyes on the starting line as 2,000 horsepower apiece coming out of the water area. It's John Kimball against Don Garland. Taking a look at a burnout, this is John Kimball, and you see the tires growing in height as the centrifugal force growing the rubber higher and higher, almost to the point that they would be as he crosses the finish line. Burnout, of course, designed to heat those broad rubber slicks, provide the utmost in traction. Big Daddy Don Garlitz debuted this car at the Winter Nationals. He failed to qualify, worked hard on it for 2 weeks, and got the car into a very competitive posture. So competitive, he was the number 4 qualifier here at the Gatornationals. He's from Sefner, Florida, just a suburb of Tampa, a few short miles away from Gainesville, and is definitely the crowd favorite in top fuel racing. An electronic starting device known as a Christmas tree is used to send these landlocked missiles on their way. And this is the view of the Christmas tree as seen by John Kimball. He is in the lane nearest the camera. You see both cars are approaching the lanes, the lights at the top of the tree. When all 4 lights are lit, that means it's time for Starter Buster Couch to throw the switch. The green light comes on as they leave at the proper moment. And side by side, they streak down the quarter mile. It's Big Daddy Don Garlitz there first, 6.02 seconds. His speed, 235 miles an hour. John Kimball close behind at 6.08 seconds. His speed 240, but not enough to catch Big Daddy. Richard Tharp at the wheel of the dark blue dragster owned by Candies and Hughes. Tharp, a professional race driver from Dallas, Texas, is a former national champion and a former world champion. He's racing against one of his strongest competitors, Shirley, the bright pink dragster that carried Shirley Muldowney to the winner's circle of the recent Winter Nationals just a couple of months ago out at Pomona, California. Now bearing the single name Shirley on the side of the car, but no one mistakes it. They know who it is, Shirley Muldowney, the former world champion. Her burnout's completed. She's approaching the starting line. The electronic Christmas tree is controlled at the starting line by these 3 light beams. You see Shirley creeping into the pre-stage light. That means they're only a few inches away from the actual start of the quarter mile. Now Richard Tharp is staged. That means he's ready. Shirley Muldowney comes forward. She's ready. They leave the starting line together. And something goes wrong with Shirley Muldowney's car, and something comes off Richard Tharp's car. And Tharp wins it, 6.19 seconds. His speed, 238 miles an hour. And that finish line just 1,320 feet away from the starting line, very slowly crossing it is Shirley Muldowney. Right there you see the motor or something going away in Shirley's car, while bouncing on the track is some part or piece off of the Candies and Hughes dragster. A tough break for Shirley Muldowney. She's standing down on the return road looking at the car, trying to figure out what may have broken. But for Richard Tharp, what a break.
Right next to the battery box.
Richard Tharp, some days you run 580s and can't buy a victory. Today just seems to be your day. Luck running with you.
Well, you're right. I'm glad it's my day. I need all the luck I can get. I don't know what happened to Shirley. It was close, and then she just went away. I don't know. She must have broke something or something.
Violent tire shake, and I notice here that your coil wire has shaken completely off. So there was really no ignition on the car half the racetrack.
Well, we're just in a violent shake. I don't know what's wrong with it. We've always had a little tire shake problem, but it's ridiculous today. I mean, it's shaking the car completely apart. I don't know.
Well, if you get it solved, you're going to be a threat for sure. Richard Tharp for Candies and Hughes.
Steve, that was the coil that shook off the car just a few hundred feet off the starting line. The motor detonating itself to a 6.19 second elapsed time. Our next pair of cars ready, and something breaks on Bob Noyce's car. You see the water pouring out of the cylinder head in the right-hand side. It's just pumping water out underneath the vehicle. Obviously, he can't run in that kind of condition. The crew from the starting line running down track to get next to Bob Noyce's car, making sure he's not in any danger, while his competitor Gary Beck backs up after his burnout. The emergency crew and starting line crew working to get the car of Bob Noyce out of gear, and will be pushing him back into the pit area. Here, let's watch again and see if we can tell what happened. Coming out of the water, everything's fine. Then all of a sudden, something breaks in the water line as the car comes to a halt with water pouring out of it, and you see also missing the supercharger drive belt. So a tough break for Bob Noyce right at the starting line. But for Gary Beck, driving for Larry Minor, what a break this is. A single run. All he has to do is complete the quarter-mile pass. He cannot lose the race unless he crosses the center line or hits the guardrail on the outer extremity of the racetrack. But all eyes are on the starting line to see if Gary Beck will make a hard run down the quarter mile. And he does not. The car goes into some violent tire shake. He decides, rather than going for low elapsed time, which could give him lane choice in the next round, he just coasts through rather than braking or taking the chance of breaking some parts or pieces. Steve is caught up with Bob Noyce in the pits.
Dave, they always talk about the inexpensive part in motor racing that costs a valuable victory. In the case of Bob Noyce, here it is, a broken supercharger belt that goes right around the pulleys here. Once this came off, what happened, Bob?
No horsepower. The motor just sits there and idles, and you can't do anything.
But there was something on the racetrack, some fluid.
It broke a water line on our oil water pump here, and we just water leaked out, that's all.
Well, if we're going to have anything on the track, let's hope it's water throughout this event.
Beats oil.
The final pair of cars getting ready for their run down this quarter mile in the second round of racing. A total of 16 top fuel dragsters started off the first round. Jeb Allen against Frank Bradley. Both cars burnouts completed, approaching the starting line, and they leave the line together. A great lead for Jeb Allen as he starts to power away from Frank Bradley. And it's Jeb Allen, 5.88 second elapsed time. That's the quickest elapsed time in the entire second round of racing. Here again we see as Jeb Allen starts his launch from the starting line. He begins to lengthen his lead over Frank Bradley. His speed at the end of the quarter mile, over 245 miles an hour, for a big second round win for 25-year-old Jeb Allen. Jeb serving as his own crew chief and ace mechanic throughout this entire weekend, heads back into the pits to get ready for the semifinals and tells his crew, let's go, we need to get to work. And a lot of work going on here in Shirley Muldowney's pit area as we take a look at the part that broke that caused her to go out of racing. Here's Steve.
Dave, a big crowd around Shirley Muldowney's car. They love her in victory and defeat. What happened?
Something broke in the drivetrain, twisted something off. We haven't been beat like that in a long time.
Attributable to the tire shake?
We're not sure. Possibly. It shook pretty hard, Steve. It really shook hard.
I know you love to race Richard Tharp. He's one of your favorite targets.
He's a good driver,
Yeah,
and
he
he
is.
really makes you pay attention. I like to race Richard. I like to get him, too.
Watching intently, Shirley's pet dog, Skippy. We'll be back with more racing from the Gatornationals in just a moment. Back at the Gatornationals at Gainesville Raceway in Gainesville, Florida, I'm Dave McClelland, along with Steve Evans, and we've joined the thousands of spectators in the pit area to take a look at what is really a funny car.
The funny car is really a 25-year, $40,000 evolution of the stock car. Mechanically, the engine, the transmission, the differential, identical to that of a top fuel dragster, but that's where the similarities end. With the engine in front of the driver, an onboard fire extinguisher system is required. The exhaust header's much different than that of the fuel dragsters, but the big difference, really, are the flip-top fiberglass bodies that act as an airfoil, pushing downward on the car for more traction, even an escape hatch in case the driver has to make a speedy exit.
Picking up the racing action in the first round of Funny Car Eliminator, this is the defending champion, Gordy Bonin, his competition, the War Eagle car of Dale Poldy. Both cars qualified exceptionally well in this event. Gordy having his share of problems going into wheel stands on practically every qualifying run, but the War Eagle of Dale Poldy and Mike Hamby qualified in the number 7 position at an outstanding 6.13 second elapsed time. Let's see if he can match that in the first round of eliminations as he faces the defending champion, Gordy Bonin. Looking at the Christmas tree from the perspective of Bonin as he sits encased in that Pontiac Trans Am Firebird. They leave the line together. And Bonin beginning out of control. He almost hits Dale Poldy. And Bonin brings the car back under control, pulls back into his lane. A tremendous driving job for the defending champion, Gordy Bonin. He is eliminated from the race by virtue of crossing the center line. But very, very close call for Gordy Bonin and Dale Poldy. Here you see Bonin out of control, crossing over, almost hitting Dale Poldy.
Was there any point there where you thought maybe you might make contact with the rail or even possibly Dale Poldy?
No, the thing was, doing what it's supposed to do about 1,000 feet, and I thought the race was over, And then the thing just made an immediate left and a right, and...
Were you ahead at that point?
Yeah, I made an immediate left and I got out of it, and then, I kind of straightened around and he went by me, so I was ahead and just marching, and the track is like glass down there.
Still in the first round of racing, it is Billy Meyer in the lane nearest the camera. His competition is young Tom Ridings from Long Beach, California. Ridings driving the car owned by Joe Pisano. Billy Meyer qualified in the number 6 spot. He had the lane choice over Tom Ridings, but still took the right-hand lane after watching Gordy Bonin go out of control, and Billy Meyer does it. He crosses the center line. Tom Ridings very wisely shuts the engine down in Joe Pisano's funny car. Billy Meyer, narrowly missing Tom Ridings, coasts through, the loser by virtue of crossing the center line. Tom Ridings the winner. Let's take a look again at the action here as we see both cars leaving the starting line on the green, and Billy almost instantly going across the center line. Tom Ridings seeing him, lifting off the throttle, giving him plenty of room to get by. Let's go again to Steve Evans.
Well, other than a red light, there's no less favorite way to lose than crossing the center line. What happened, Billy?
That lane wasn't what I thought it was.
Had you considered maybe taking the left-hand lane instead of the right?
Yeah, I was going to.
What made your decision?
Me, I'm the one that decides.
But based on what?
Somebody else.
Now, you saw Gary Beck go, what, 571 in that lane. Did that have anything to do with it?
Well, just a lot of people ran good in that lane. The funny car's been shaking in the left lane.
So Billy Meyer, trying to avoid the shake, finds that the track sends him right over the center line.
A real tough break for Billy Meyer as he heads back to the pits. His racing day completed here at the Gatornationals. Here's some of the cars and drivers remaining. Raymond Beadle, the world champion in the Blue Max. Tom Hoover, the driver of the Showtime Corvette. Don the Snake Prudhomme, the low qualifier with back-to-back 5.98 second elapsed time. Al Segrini debuting his new car at the Gatornationals. Dale Poldy, you've seen him, the driver of the War Eagle. Paul Smith, he wheels the car bearing the label The Sting. And this is Tom Ridings, the young driver for Joe Pisano. Ron Colson wheeling the car owned by Roland Leong. The crowd on their feet as we get ready to move into the second round of funny car eliminations. Both cars doing the burnouts. Raymond Beadle, the world champion, is in the lane furthest from the camera. The Corvette-bodied car is Tom Hoover. Hoover, a 15-year-plus veteran in drag racing, campaigned top fuel dragsters, then a few years ago moved into funny cars. Here we're watching Hoover on a burnout, getting those tires exceptionally hot, trying for the traction that'll put his car through the quarter mile in less than 6 seconds. Raymond Beadle has already done that, recording a 5.99 second elapsed time in the first round of elimination. A great start for both cars. Raymond Beadle drifting a little bit around in his lane, but he holds on to win it. Ray Beadle, 6.06 seconds elapsed time, 227 miles an hour. And you talk about close racing. Here, as we watch again, you see how close Tom Hoover comes to taking the measure of Ray Beadle. His elapsed time, a 6.12 second.
Well, judging by the smoke and the lights, you might have heard it this time.
We did hurt it a little bit. Hurt it a little bit.
Anymore, that's kind of par for the course, though.
All right. That's all right. As long as we win, we don't mind hurting it.
Beadle will sacrifice some pistons for a win light any time, Dave.
Steve, you're right. As Tom Hoover, along with his dad, who's the crew chief, and all of his crew, heading back into the pits. A day of racing over for him, but there's many more to come. Al Segrini has got the dubious pleasure of running the man that's the low qualifier, Don the Snake Prudhomme. 5.98 seconds elapsed time, the first time ever in the history of the sport that a funny car has recorded 2 5-second elapsed times in qualifying. Here again, watching from Al Segrini's point of view, you see the cars leave the starting line, and look at Prudhomme go. By several car lengths, Don Prudhomme establishes a new national record at 5.94 seconds as he soundly trounces Al Segrini. 5.94 seconds with a speed of 234 miles an hour. That is a new national record for Don Prudhomme. Prudhomme so far ahead, Segrini not even in view as they cross the starting line. And Al Segrini out of his car in the turnaround area, taking off the fire mask and pulling off the Nomex sock that covers his face during competition, kind of looking a little bit bewildered as he watched Prudhomme go away with a 5.94 second elapsed time.
When the Max gets tough with a 5.99, the Snake just gets a bit tougher with brand new national record at 5.94. Congratulations.
This deal's getting plenty serious, isn't it?
You got a lot bigger smile this round than you did the last one.
Yeah, it's coming around. You know, we just got to run so damn hard to make it perform, but got to do whatever it takes, you know.
When you came into this race, especially during qualifying, did you think a 94 was even possible?
Oh, with these things, you never know.
The next pair of cars, Dale Poldy. We saw him in round number 1 as he had a lucky break against Gordy Bonnet. This is somewhat of the surprise car of the race, the Sting. Paul Smith is the driver. He qualified in the number 3 position at a 6.06 second elapsed time. Certainly one to be reckoned with. And Dale, apparently some problems in Poldy's car. His partner Mike Hamby opening up the car, the starting line crew helping holding up the body. And everybody running around, the crew members standing there holding the body up as Paul Smith continuing to do his burnouts in the other lane. Something must be leaking from the car. That's the only reason generally that the body is raised once the engine started and the burnout's completed. Dale Poldy, the driver, sitting patiently holding on to the brake handle, keeping the car from moving, kind of trying to give some directions as Mike Hamby under the fiberglass body working on the far side of the motor. We can't see exactly what it is, but the body's coming back down. They've not shut him off, so it will be a race between Dale Poldy and Paul Smith. The concentration may be broken for Poldy. We'll have to wait and see. Anything that changes from the norm can break the concentration of these drivers, and it's all important. And something going wrong with Smith's car. He loses traction, and Poldy right down the center of the lane. And the elapsed time, 6.07 seconds. His speed, 239 miles an hour. Certainly nothing wrong with that right-hand lane now. Here you see Paul Smith losing traction. The car starting to bounce as he leaves the starting line. But Dale Poldy with an astounding 6.07 seconds.
Well, Dave, whatever Dale Poldy's problem was on the starting line, he certainly salvaged it down here with a win at 6:07. Dale, what was going on up there?
I forgot to tighten a fuel line on it, and I saw it on the burnout. I saw it spray fuel out of it, and I motioned my partner, Mike Hamby. He raised the body up, saw it, and he tightened it up, and Paul Smith waited for me, and I think that was very professional of him.
The last two cars in this round of racing in Funny Car Eliminator. We started with 16. After this pair run, we'll be down to 4 cars for the semifinals. This is Tom Ridings driving for Joe Pisano against Roland Leong's Hawaiian, driven by Ron Colson. The burnouts are completed, and Ron Colson up in smoke right off the starting line. He starts to lose control in that left lane, but Tom Ridings has an easy win at 6.35 seconds. His speed only 185 miles an hour. He saw Ron Colson losing traction, knew it, and shut it down early. Once again, we see just as he lets the clutch out and hits the accelerator pedal, the Hawaiian going up in smoke off the starting line, starting to make a bit of a funny move. But Ron Colson, a very wise and track-savvy driver, backs out of it. Tom Ridings taking off his fire suit in the turnaround area, waiting for Joe Pisano and the crew to come pick him up. We'll be back with more racing from the Gatornationals in just a moment. An enthusiastic and happy crowd jammed into Gainesville Raceway, enjoying all of the excitement of championship drag racing. In addition to the professional categories, they watched the Sportsman racing, concluded earlier today, as George Williams of Lebanon, Indiana, won stock eliminator over a red lighting Ray Cook. In Super Stock Eliminator, it was again a red light on the Christmas tree as the world champion, Amy Falk, left the red bulb glowing, indicating she left the starting line just a fraction of a second too soon. The winner from nearby Stark, Florida, Bud Spears. In Competition Eliminator, it was the Volkswagen dragster of Jeff Leninger, the low qualifier, who red-lit away his chance for a win, giving the victory to Dennis Ferrara in his Chevrolet Monza. One of the special categories of competition at the Gatornationals is Pro Stock Bike. Motorcycles, very similar to the types of bikes you see on the streets, but with allowable modifications, moving them into the highly competitive Pro Stock category. The finalist, Mike Keat, astride a Kawasaki in the lane nearest the camera. Ed Ryan riding a Harley-Davidson. Superbike Mike stretching out his lead and taking the win. The crew for Superbike Mike very happy with the victory. Pro Stock Eliminator in motorcycle category with an elapsed time of 9.19 seconds. His speed over 140 miles an hour as he edges out Ed Ryan of Revere, Massachusetts. Ryan astride his Harley-Davidson. At the end of the track, an obviously happy Mike Keat.
Well, let's see. The last 2 years world champions went out early.
Yeah, they had bad luck. That's all we can say about them. You know, they got the power. They just had bad luck.
And you rode a heck of a race, too. Starting line is very important with the motorcycles, isn't it?
It definitely is. I just had to ease it off, but this track has really come around. It's a great track.
The final pair of cars in Sportsman category competition, Pro Comp Eliminator, a pair of alcohol-burning dragsters. The world champion, the Grace Cup champion in the near lane, Billy Williams. This competition comes from Bay City, Texas, and a former Cajun Nationals winner, that is Willard Bubb. It was a year ago that Billy Williams won practically everything there was to win in sportsman racing. He won the coveted Grace Cup championship with a big $15,000 pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. But here he is trying for the Gatornationals championship, and he wins it over Willard Bubb. His elapsed time, 6.60 seconds. His speed, 210 miles an hour. For Billy Williams, adding another national title to his credit. Willard Bubb was not giving up easily, though, as he left the starting line right beside Billy Williams. But a little bit of extra horsepower in the Williams and Kazanjian entry pulls him to a victory at the finish line.
Call him the Munchkin or 640 Shorty. He doesn't care. He's got a #1 in his car. He's the world champion and now the Gatornationals champion. Congratulations. This one came tough.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, I did. I didn't think I was going to make it. I almost even waived the points for it.
Is that right? This race has eluded you, even though you won 6 national events or something like that last year.
6, yeah.
And here's the man that you just defeated. In fact, you built the engine in his car, Willard Buff, and a great drive for you, too, Willard. He's a good one, isn't he?
Yeah, good teacher. Can't deny that.
Okay, two happy competitors, but this is the champion of the Gator Nationals, Billy Williams.
Billy Williams would like nothing better to repeat as the top sportsman racer in all the country as he sets his sights on the Grace Quaker State Performance Cup for 1980. The sportsman category competition completed. The top fuel dragsters headed back to the starting lines. There you see our sportsman winners plus the pro bike champion, Mike Keith. We'll be back with more racing from the Gator Nationals in just a moment. Back at the NHRA Gator Nationals in Gainesville, Florida, I'm Dave McClelland along with Steve Evans, and we have 4 cars remaining in Top Fuel Eliminator. We're ready for the semifinal round of racing, and it is Big Daddy Don Garlits against Jeb Allen. With over 20 years of driving experience in Top Fuel Eliminator, Big Daddy has been down the racetrack many a time. His competition at the age of 25 is one of the up-and-coming superstars of the sport, winning his first national title at the tender age of 18 when Jeb Allen won the Summer Nationals title in Englishtown, New Jersey. Right now, he's got one of the toughest chores cut out for any Top Fuel racer, and that is defeating the man driving the black car, Big Daddy Don Garlits. The burnout's completed. Coming into the staging beams, both drivers concentrating on the Christmas tree. A good start for both cars. And Big Daddy starts to lose control. He has to back out of it, and it is Jeb Allen taking the win. And at an elapsed time of 5.84 seconds, Jeb just getting quicker every round of eliminations. His speed 239 miles an hour. Something going wrong with Big Daddy's car as it started to make a violent move to the left. The track-savvy veteran backing out instantly and bringing the car under control. Here you see Garlits' car making the move towards the center line. He very wisely backs out and lets Jeb Allen go on for the win.
This has got the thrill of at least the last 6 months for Jeb Allen to put away Big Daddy.
Yeah, we just, oh geez, I'm so happy. In the state of Florida, folks. You know, it's just wonderful to do that. We're in the final round now, and that's an 84 we run.
84, 239.
Boy, that's great. You know, we've been working at this for a year now, trying to get this car to run and perform and not hurt itself. With our sponsors, English Leather, and everybody, it's just wonderful that it can happen.
Okay, now how important is lane choice?
I think it's the race.
Okay, well, it's coming up right now. Let's go back to the starting line and find out if Jeb Allen gets lane choice or if it's the winner of this next pair.
Steve, this next pair includes 2 cars that are certainly capable of capturing lane choice. Richard Tharp, the driver of the Candies and Hughes car, and Gary Beck, the driver for Larry Minor. Beck, as we've seen already, has established the 5th quickest time in the history of drag racing right here on this racetrack at 5.71 seconds. He'd love to duplicate that, but track conditions change from round to round, so it may be very difficult. Richard Tharp had a lucky break when Shirley Muldowney broke something in her transmission and was unable to give him a good race. Now everything's on the starting line between Beck and Tharp. Tharp beginning into tire shake, goes out of control slightly, and it is Gary Beck with the win and moves into the finals with the elapsed time of 5.82 seconds at over 241 miles an hour. Gary Beck gets lane choice, that all-important choice of the racing surface in the final round. You see Richard Tharp, the car shaking the tires violently, starts out of control. He brings it back to the center of the lane, but not in time to stop Gary Beck.
Gary Beck, a former world champion, a 2-time U.S. Nationals champion, but let's face it, there's been a dry spell the last few years, but look at this grin, Dave. 582, you have lane choice. Jeb Allen told me moments ago lane choice means the race. Do you believe that?
Well, certainly. The track's been real tricky, and we had a little trouble last round, shook the tires, broke the transmission, and fortunately we're back on the path. Jeb's tough, that's for sure. We've had a lot of trouble with him in national events.
And a good friend of yours.
Oh, yes, certainly. We know the Allens real well, but I'll tell you, Larry Minor and Jim Wright have got this thing cooking, and fortunately for me, I get to change the pedals in it, and here we go.
And here we go into funny car semifinals. This is the War Eagle of Dale Paldy and Mike Hamby. They had lots of problems the round before. Hope they've got them fixed now. This is the man that has established a new national record at 5.94 seconds. Don the Snake Prudhomme in his Plymouth Arrow-bodied funny car. And again, something going wrong with the War Eagle. The crew down on the ground looking to see what is it coming out of the car. Starter Buster Couch says, no, that's it, shut it off. There's something leaking on the track that causes a hazard, and it is Don Prudhomme on a single. Let's see if he runs it all the way. And run it all the way he did. Another new national record, 5.93 seconds. His speed, 239 miles an hour. A very dejected Mike Hamby walking up to look into the car as Dale Poldy sits in and says, what went wrong? Let's go to the finish line.
593, it's just science fiction.
Well, it's the track's been tremendous, and everything's working out pretty good so far.
What happened on the starting line?
I don't know. The tree got a little bit messed up, but I just left when the amber came on. We're all right?
Poldy had a leak or something, and I believe he was shut off.
Oh, okay. I didn't know. I didn't know that. See, I was staged, and the light didn't go amber, so I didn't know what was going on.
You wounded it the last round, but it looks dry now.
It's all right. Yeah, we'll wound it the next one, too.
Don Prudhomme, is he ready for the final? And let's see who he races.
The other 5-second funny car, Raymond Beadle in the Blue Max against Tom Ridings, driving for Joe Pisano. Ridings a bit of an easy break in the previous round, and his competition went up in smoke. But he's got his work cut out for him, trying to beat the world champion, Raymond Beadle. Beadle bearing the big number 1 on the Blue Max car, signifying his world champion title. Tom Ridings, as we said, moving up from the Pro Cop category, is not to have it today. You see a plume of smoke or something coming out in front of the car or in front of the windshield on the Blue Max. He won the race, hurt the motor severely, it appeared, but he still ran a 6.11 second elapsed time at over 207 miles an hour. Maybe in slow motion we can get a better view of just what went wrong with Raymond Beadle in the Blue Max. Here you see something starting to spew out of the car right around the engine compartment. Let's go again to the finish line.
As Raymond Beadle crawls in the car, the crew has already diagnosed the problem. In fact, you can see a broken windshield where a port line, it's a fuel line that puts nitro in right on top of the supercharger, came off, and it came off very early. Raymond says, oh boy, at least I know what's wrong with it. It'll run a 5. Look out, Snake.
As Raymond Beadle heads back to the pits to get ready for the final round, we'll be back in just a moment with the finals in the professional categories of the 11th annual NHRA Gatornationals. Only 6 cars remain in competition at the Gatornationals. The finalists in the 3 professional categories, Pro Stock, Funny Car, and Top Fuel. In Top Fuel semifinal, we saw Doug Garlitz have problems. Steve's with him.
Boy, you could hear the groan from the grandstands when their own Big Daddy Don Garlitz, Florida's superstar, went out of the semifinals. But something unusual happened, you tell me.
Yeah, we broke an axle, Steve.
Ooh, that can be real trouble.
Well, I've often worried about that. You know, we run these spools, and the other wheel keeps driving, and I always thought you just make a violent turn. Well, it made a pretty violent turn, but it wasn't one that wasn't able to be brought back under control. I lifted immediately and cut it hard right, and it didn't even cross the center line.
I want to put you on the spot here. Jeb Allen and Gary Beck in the final. Who do you pick?
Well, Gary Beck has got the lane choice with a 582. I'm going to go for Beck.
Well, that's what Jeb said. Lane choice could be the race.
Yeah, however, Beck ran the 582 in the right lane, didn't he?
No, left lane.
Oh, he did do it in the left lane. Okay.
You'll go with Beck then?
I'm going to go with Beck because I think he's a little more experienced than Allen. He's got an awful good car, and he's good. And I think that maybe Allen will maybe overdo his a little bit, where Beck won't. Beck will just leave his car like it is.
Before we get to that final in Top Fuel Eliminator, here are the factory hot rods, the finals in Pro Stock. Driving the Chevrolet Camaro is Lee Shepard from Arlington, Texas. Alongside of him will be the man wearing number 1, the world champion Bob Glidden out of Whiteland, Indiana. The Plymouth Arrow, the burnouts completed, approaching the starting line. Crew Chief Etta Glidden watching in the background, Lee Shepard concentrating on the Christmas tree. All important to start in this Pro Stock category, as it is in all categories of championship drag racing. Side by side, they streak down the quarter mile. The Chevrolet Camaro of Lee Shepard in the lane nearest the camera, and it is an upset win as Lee Shepard takes the measure of the low qualifier, Bob Glidden, and listen to the elapsed times. 8.51 seconds for both Shepard and Glidden. A bit of a hole shot for Lee Shepard.
Well, you prove once again that Bob Glidden indeed is not invincible, not with a good driver.
No, he's not, but he's as tough as they come.
Okay, the Chevrolet fans are rejoicing up in the grandstands. Let's go back to the starting line and Dave.
Steve, on the starting line, the final and funny car eliminator. And this man, 38-year-old Don Prudhomme, has absolutely devastated funny car racing this weekend. From the qualifying times of 5:98 to the new national record of 5:93, he's pitted against the reigning world champion Raymond Beadle, and Prudhomme lengthens his lead and wins it handily. Another 5-second elapsed time, 5.98 seconds. His speed, 238 miles an hour. A respectable 6:17 for Beadle, but nowhere close. Prudhomme some $10,000 richer as a result of this win.
Younger than I am, that helps.
And exhausted Don the Snake Prudhomme with a superhuman effort. 5 5-second runs, a feat never before accomplished. It's been a number of years since you've seen the winner's circle here.
It really has. You know, we've just, my crew's worked very hard, and Goodyear really helped us out here. It was the kind of track that without the tires that we had to run it.
No one would have predicted even one 5-second run Thursday or Friday.
I know. Yeah, it's just funny. You know, these cars are so capable of running good, and Raymond Beadle's car is tremendous, you know, and I knew I had my work cut out.
You had to catch up a little bit there.
Yeah, I sure did. Yeah, I was a little late at the starting line. I mean, they were really ready for us.
But with the kind of power you've got, you don't want to take a chance red lighting either.
That's right, yeah, and smoking the tires. You know, we were at Bakersfield the other week and smoked tires last round, and it just made me sick.
Well, congratulations. You got to be a happy guy right now. Let me shake your hand.
Thank
you. The Snake is back. Believe it.
Steve, nobody in Gainesville doubts that the Snake is back. The final and top fuel eliminator, Jeb Allen against Gary Beck. We've heard Don Garlitz predict Gary Beck to be the winner. And on the basis of times, he has picked the right one because Beck in with a 5.71 second elapsed time. Some possible trouble with Jeb Allen's car. No, he says everything's A-okay. Let's go to the starting line. That 5.71 second time in the first round for Beck is the 5th quickest elapsed time in the history of the sport. But Jeb Allen has been consistently improving throughout eliminations. Everything on the line right now, some $10,000 going to the winner. Jeb Allen against Gary Beck. Beck with a big hole shot and a big lead off the starting line, but here comes Jeb Allen and he wins it. The upset of Top Fuel Eliminator Racing. Jeb Allen defeats Gary Beck in the final. As we look one more time, you see the hole shot or the head start off the starting line going to Gary Beck, but just before the finish line, it's Jeb Allen.
Where did you go around him?
When I shifted about half track. When I started going over towards him, broke the tires loose, and I think I started making some horsepower and just drove around him.
And that's when you start praying for the motor to just stay together for another few seconds.
Oh, yeah. The motor's working real well, as a matter of fact, except for this slight little oil leak in the front we can't locate. But I'd just like to say my wife and kids aren't here. My son, Troy, I'm sure he's going to be very happy to see this. And my dad and mom, English Leather, and everybody else, Steve.
Congratulations, a great victory.
Thank you.
Jeb Allen, who knows, he could be the 1980 world champion.